Hello and welcome to the world's first Paul Weller fan podcast. I'm Dan Jennings. This is the story of 66, a celebration of the brand new album from the legend that is singer, songwriter and musician Paul Weller. This new series features podcast conversations with many of the huge talents that have been involved in the creation of Paul's 17th solo studio album. What I hope is that these podcasts give you a deeper insight into the creation of the new LP and that sheer joy of the creative process. And ultimately, it all comes back to the songs. What you'll hear about this LP, probably more than any other, is an album packed full of collaboration. Welcome to the story of 66. On this episode of the podcast, I'm joined by Jacko Peake, sax player, flute player in the Paul Weller Band, another huge talent and a fabulous fella as well. Do check out episode 56 of series 1 for the full Jacko story. On this episode, we're going to be chatting 66, and Jacko is all over this album. As you'd heard from my conversation with Paul, he absolutely loves what Jacko brings to the band. So let's get into it. Jacko Peake, thanks for joining me. Lovely to see you. How are you?
You too, Dan. I'm very well. Yeah, all going good. I'm in my little man cave in North London. Baritones, altos, guitars, drums, banjos, all twanging and squeaking. Been playing a lot this week since I've got back from tour. I've had loads of remote sessions to do, and I've got 2 different writing projects that I'm doing. Writing a B-side for a possible Push re-release of Cut Me Loose, which was a 12-inch we had out back in the day, early 90s, I think that came out. Record company wants to re-release that for like a DJ 7-inch, and so we've concocted a B-side for it. Various other little sessions, and just enjoying playing, keeping busy.
Most recently, we have seen, at the time of recording, I've been watching videos and social media of Down Under and Japan.
Yeah.
So I should say at the time of recording here, we're just ahead of the UK tour that's going to come. So this is what you've just come back from. And the amount of notes on social media saying how good it was for Jacko to be back in the band again, but B, just how much and you could see it on the screen, how much you add to the sound of things. Like things like Shout to the Top and stuff. It's like, oh my God, this is amazing.
I love playing that. It's just a chance for me to express myself in the 16-bar sort of crazy solo at the end, but it's so uplifting, the whole thing. And I'm playing a lot of baritone in the set as a kind of parts instrument along with the bass. And that kind of works really well. I think Paul really likes it, and it adds another little color to the thing, kind of makes it a little more funky and soulful, I hope. But I enjoyed doing the baritone stuff, and it's so great to be back doing it. I mean, time has flown since lockdown, and I'm just looking at all my tour passes to give me a kind of framework to remember. And then I'm just looking at all of the shows we've done, and it's an enormous amount of work we've done in the last 2-3 years.
When we last chatted, you joined the band for that internet gig. Do you remember the Midsummer Music thing?
Summer Music, yeah.
And we weren't yet at the point, we were at the point where you were about to go out on the tour, the UK tour. So this would have been November 2021 would have been.
That's right. It was November and December 21, yeah.
Can you remember the first gig back with them then? Can you remember the venue, the first time you're back on stage with the Paul Weller Band?
It was Coventry, the HMV venue, and we did a 2.5-hour set. Actually, I think it was 2 3/4. And we had a kind of instrumental.
Like Springsteen.
Because it was it was hilarious. It was the first show back after lockdown, and Paul wanted to play everything. He just was, everyone was just busting to get out. We had a long acoustic set in the middle of it. So there was a changeover, and then we went back to the, sort of full band electric setup. After that, it was just insanely long. I think it was 2 3/4 hours long, and in Coventry. And I think that was the only time we did it. I
think you might have done Oxford fairly similar today, and then I think you'll probably all then realise that was nuts for the rest of the tour, maybe.
Yeah. So the next gig was Oxford, the new theatre, and then we did the Forum in Bath. Those were the first 3. I think we trimmed the set down a bit by Bath, actually.
You calmed down a little bit, yeah.
Well, Paul was like, I don't think people have got such a long attention span. It's like going to see films these days. I'm going to let's go and see a film, to my missus, and she says, it's 3 hours. Oh, 3 hours long.
I Yeah. How many loo breaks am I going to need? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Especially if you go to the Everyman and drink beer all the way through it.
Yeah, exactly. So how different was it then? So that was the first tour. How different was it then versus back in the day? So you're back in the band compared to kind of like the early 90s. I mean, a different culture entirely, I would imagine.
That's interesting. I can think of the similarities.
Okay.
Or so. For example, Kenny would be tour managing back in the day. And in fact, the last time, I mean, before this era of me being back with Paul, the last time I worked with Paul live and did quite a few things was in the mid-2000s around the As Is Now Studio 150 thing with the Dutch horn section. Yeah. And Kenny was tour managing and John was around, bless him. And Bill Wheeler, who now tour manages, Kenny's son, he was just this little lad learning the ropes, and but he was at a lot of the gigs, and I think he was doing a bit of merchandising and stuff. So now we have Bill, the new generation, and Bill is totally organized and on it. Everything runs completely smoothly and has always done so since I've known Bill being tour manager. I mean, it might fall to bits this year. He might lose it completely.
Yeah, he's got a lot on this year, right?
Yeah, he does. Yeah, but yeah, so that's the difference there. But I mean, also, but the culture's kind of very similar. It's a lot easier this time for some reason. All the kind of cogs and the wheels in motion and the attitudes and the general outlook is very much simpler and easier and less problematic. You know, there's not nearly as much partying going on. Because
less hangovers, right? Yeah, okay.
There's less hangover, yeah, and there's less kind of complications because of all of that. People just want to make sure the gigs are really good, and everyone wants to be on the top of their game. This is the mindset in the camp, in the Weller camp. It's all about the music. It's all about being on top form and focused and the cycle of the day, getting ready for the gig, going through your routine and making sure that you're going to absolutely have a blast and give the people best that we can of ourselves.
What was great about, obviously that was off the back of Fat Pop we'd had on Sunset that he hadn't been able to tour properly, really. Straight in that tour, we get the live debut of That Pleasure, which again, big for you but Shades of Blue. But also we have, the reintroduction of some songs that maybe we hadn't heard as frequently, so recently rather. So Above the Clouds, I hadn't heard for quite a while, and suddenly it was back in the set. But you get those songs that you're playing again, which you played first time round, Wildwood, Into Tomorrow,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, Above the Clouds has always been in and out, but it's a definite constant these days. It's been in the set. It really does resonate with the audience, I think, Above the Clouds. And it's poetically, it's lovely, and musically, it's lovely. And it just, I think people really love that track, and we love playing it. Into Tomorrow is great. That actually goes into kind of mad jam with Ben and Steve Pilgrim both having like a drum off that starts it off. And then, I kind of go into outer space and back, which I really enjoy. I kind of like get a bit atonal with it and just freak out with it. And no one's actually told me to stop doing
This is the one, I think Tom was talking about this. Is this the one where there's like a running joke on the tour of like how far they can push you now in terms of like he's basically going to collapse. He's giving it so much he's going to collapse on stage. This is that song, is it? He said, Tom said he can see the veins on the back of your neck popping out. You're giving it so much.
Yeah. He said, we know when to stop the tune when I've gone from sort of like puce to purple, and the steam coming out of my ears. So, and then, because I can't see the band. I'm just totally in a kind of zone, looking out to the audience, but just completely I really do kind of like lose it and go some out of body experience. So they know when to call time on that.
Wonderful. That was also, I don't know if this was your first return to Barrowlands since the last time you played with Paul, but Barrowlands is always a huge big highlight for the tour and kind of properly kicks off. But on that tour, I think you're back at Barrowlands again, weren't you?
Yeah, that first tour. Yeah, I'm looking at this 29th of November, 21. We did Barrowlands, and that's always great. It's a great hall, that, because it's got a curved ceiling. And it's really acoustically, it's amazing. Out front on stage, it's got a really great sound. And I think it must be because of this kind of like weird curved ceiling it's got, but it's proper old school rock and roll is just like how you'd want it the crowd's always really up for it. Scottish crowds are always amazing, actually. Yeah.
That tour, I think that was the one that came to an end early because of COVID. And I don't know that I got to see you on that first comeback there. I'm trying to remember, but I wanted to skip over to 2022. I did get to see you then at Brixton and in Brighton as well, actually, this another tour of the UK. I love the way the sound of the band is always evolving. We're not standing still at all. You'll never hear the songs done in the same way exactly. But your addition to the band, and Paul and I talked about this as well, your addition to the band, it gives it a different dimension, because it's not like Paul's always had brass in the band since those Studio 150 days. I don't think he's had any, actually, maybe. Sometimes the Stone Foundation boys play. It just adds something completely different to the mix, which Paul is absolutely loving right now, right?
Yeah, I think he is, and with the saxophone, it's kind of like I'm playing a lot of stuff that isn't solo-y or anything, and I'm just trying to find a part, the kind of a space with Tom on the keys, and then the backing vocal element, which is so strong, with Jake now singing, Steve Pilgrim and Tom Van Heel singing 3-part harmonies and stuff, really lush. I kind of blend a lot with that kind of colour in there, and I'm joining up some of the dots between different sounds and different textures, and I really enjoy that sort of element of it. I mean, as a solo saxophone player, you can't really do a lot of like big brass parts, because a lot of the brass parts are written for, trumpets and trombones as well. You've got this powerhouse of brass behind it. So when I play some of the section, which would have been section parts back in the day, like Ever Changing Moods, for example, I'm kind of doing a version of it, and to make it sound cool on the saxophone and fit with the band, but not trying to make it something that it's not. So a lot of the songs, Paul loves to do versions of songs. So he loves to change things up and add new elements and add a new angle to a song. Very often he's much happier with the live version of a song we're doing than perhaps it might have been recorded 25 years ago. You know what I mean? He has no interest in sticking with what has gone on in the past, and very much wants to move forward. And if a song sounds good with a particular setup of a band, he'll do that, make it to the advantage of the band, so that it's working with the band as opposed to actually trying to fit a square peg into a round hole,
Makes sense, yeah. I also saw you in Paris. Actually, we bumped into each other outside Paradiso in Amsterdam.
Yes, we did,
On that beautiful spring day in May 2023. I'd never seen Paul abroad. That was my first overseas Weller gig, and it was a beautiful day, and I was hanging around outside just waiting to, itching to get in. And hoping I'd bump into some of you lot, obviously. I mean, what a gig. There were so many personal highlights. I was thinking about this knowing we were going to chat, and like the Attic was in the set, and the Piper. I don't think I'd ever, I saw the Attics because that was Sonic Kick, so I saw that, but I don't know that I've ever seen those songs since. And it was just like, oh my God, it was so, but also we got new songs. Paul was not afraid, and this was the same back in the day, right? Not afraid to chuck in a new one. So we got what was then called a song called Take, we got in the set list. But it's got so much in the catalogue, old and new, that you can just chuck into these set lists. It's incredible.
I know. It's amazing. Yeah. Yeah. Attic. Yeah. And the Piper was great. That was really fun to play. Jumble Queen, which was called Take and now morphed into Jumble Queen, is a real rocking sort of thing. And we've got loads of new stuff that's going to be played this year. A lot of new stuff. The album is quite eclectic, actually. The album has lots of different sort of flavors in there. Yeah, so recently in the last tour, we were doing Nothing, a version of Nothing, which is on the album, on the 66 album, the new album. Yeah, and Soul Wandering has been out on social media and stuff, so people have been able to hear that.
That's going to be great live, isn't it?
I think we're going to try and do a version of that live, and I'm sure there'll be some other surprises as well.
One of your passes there, you talked about these wonderful concert passes, will have been for Wembley Stadium.
Yeah.
This was, yeah. Had you ever played Wembley?
No, not even the arena.
What an experience, mad.
There's the.
I love the fact you're keeping these. Obviously, why wouldn't you? Brilliant.
Oh no, these tour passes are like they're like your souvenirs. I
thought you were going to say like your pension.
They're hung up. I keep them. Yeah, and it's a brilliant reminder of what you've done, and gives you the chronological sort of like thing. And I forget, my long term memory is terrible, and but it's great to sort of like go back and look down what gigs were on what tour. But Wembley was just incredible. We did an hour set, and it was kind of like a greatest hit set. It was like a smash and grab thing, and it was great fun to do. And I think it went down really well.
Did you stick around for Blur afterwards?
I did. And I really enjoyed Blur. I mean, I wasn't expecting them to be as good as they were, and I didn't think that that's their kind of music was like stadium, epic, kind of like that kind of set, because they're a bit more kind of like intellectual, I suppose, in a way. But their set was amazing, and it just completely came across in an amazing way. And it was incredibly emotional. Damon Albarn was at one point in tears, leaning across his piano, because it just, the whole situation got to him. They were brilliant. Yeah. I had a few drinks after the show, and I was there with my wife and my younger boy, Joe. We had a lovely old time watching Blur. It was great. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously for all of us, time is passing. We're all getting, I mean, you look fabulous, Jacko, but we're all getting a little older, right? If we think back to when you were first in the Paul Weller band and those early days of the 90s and songs like All the Pictures on the Wall, which is a song that you started playing again in this set list. How different does it feel playing those songs now versus then? So we talked about the kind of chaos of touring back then and it being more organized and all that now, but in terms of being on the stage and playing in the band, do you feel that in terms of those songs have take on a different meaning for you, I guess, as a player as well now?
The thing about Paul, for me, is his lyrics. He's a poet, I think. And I always lose myself in the words that he writes. And I'm always listening to the vocal tune and the sentiment of what Paul's saying and singing. And that's how I get my inspiration for what I play or don't play. So it's really about serving the song. These days, as a musician, I kind of feel very much more comfortable in my own skin. One of the things about getting older that I really appreciate is the ability to take time to think before you do anything. I seem to have more time, more space in my head to listen, whereas 30 years ago, it was the other way around. It was just pure adrenaline energy without really thinking or reflect or thinking too much. I mean, it's a much more comfortable place to be that I am in now. Because of that, I approach the tunes in a different way than I used to. I mean, it's a different band, obviously. It's very much more relaxed these days. And I think musically, I find it much more fulfilling these days, just simply where I am as a musician. So I'm in a much better place than back in the day, I think. And so that's probably the only benefit about getting old. The rest of it is rubbish.
Now, Tom mentioned this WhatsApp group that you have when you're about to go on a tour and the suggestions flooding in terms of what songs you'd all like to be considered. Are there things that from the past, whatever many, what we saw like 45 plus years of Paul's career that you're suggesting, that you're trying to chuck in? What would you like to play that you haven't yet?
Gosh. That's a good question. Yeah. I mean, on this tour, I mean, there was Paul's like, please let me know if there's any tunes you'd want. And I was thinking, I love Gravity. And even though I don't play on it, but yeah, just to stand at the side of the stage and listen to that and stuff like that. So
I was thinking, because there are a lot of songs from that first album, which you obviously played on, that first solo album, which would fit really beautifully with the band now. Things like Cosmos, I was thinking.
Round and
even some, all that stuff. You're like, oh, well, one of those would be lovely. Come on.
Yeah, so we had interestingly, there was one thing I was suggesting, let's play Aha, Oh Yeah.
Oh, well, that's a song I discovered Wellerby. You could just have that for me, Jacko. That'd be lovely. Just doing rehearsals for me. That'd be lovely.
Yeah, I know. So, it was on the list, but then it got binned because Paul thought it sounded a bit dated. And so we can suggest all we like. Paul has the final say.
Yeah.
So, but the fact he's asking us for suggestions is a real bonus, I think.
Yeah.
But and then he gets the vibe and stuff, and it inspires him to think of stuff as well. And I was all ready and prepped to go into rehearsal and start doing Aha. Yeah, I was quite excited about that, and I haven't played that since. I don't think we did it that much. Like,
no, you didn't. No.
That particular tune. So. Yeah, I mean, it's got a lot of samples in it. Brendan Lynch was instrumental in adding a lot of samples. And the couple of times we did do it live, he was with his box of tricks at the back of the stage. So
like firing them in.
Firing in these samples and stuff. So, yeah, but...
well, I think that was most of my discovery was either on the radio or it would have been Top of the Pops. And you were there on Top of the Pops. And that came up on TV the other week on one of those like 1993 Top of the Pops or 92 Top of the Pops, whatever it was, you know?
Yes, I saw that. Yeah.
Let's talk 66, the new album. Can I tell you what Paul Weller says? So 66, the new album, Paul and I chatted it through. We had a lovely playback at Black Barn and we talked about every track. And I mentioned you because you're throughout the album. And he said, Jacko's always been good, but now he's just exceptional. I just love hearing him play. It's been great. Us getting back together. We're both older and wiser. I'm not sure the latter's true, but we'll see. And better. This is the important bit. We're better players. That's the thing.
Yeah, well, that's lovely, isn't it? Yeah. Me and Paul have got a great understanding these days. He inspires me to, be focused and get the best out of a situation. Like I was saying before about it's just this ability to listen and absorb and then respond. And it's a sort of certain maturity that allows you to do that. And Paul is just loving this kind of element to being, well, older, definitely, and wiser, possibly. Yeah.
But better.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of stuff on 66 that was concocted with, Paul would come in with the chords and we'd just have a little moment in the studio where he'd be playing the chords and he might have a little idea for a melody, a vocal or a bit of a lyric or whatever. But we had a couple of sessions where Max Beasley was involved and it was Paul, myself, and Max. We'd play really, really gently in the studio, and Charles would record it all. And we'd just kind of sketch out ideas. Burnout, which is the last track on the album, has this amazing development. Because when we first did it, Paul was playing guitar, just strumming the chords, and I found this lick. I suddenly started hearing this stuff and I started playing. I was playing really quietly because it was so quiet in the studio. There's a lot of breathy, it's a kind of different sound that I normally use, but because I was playing so quietly, it's really tentative as well, especially because it's the first time I'd kind of really heard the song and it was forming itself at that time, quite an unusual chord sequence. And so we did that. And then I heard it develop and develop and develop. Then it became, there was a Johnny Harris show.
Oh, the TV was on ITV, yeah.
Yeah. And it was on, I think it was the theme tune for that. But that was quite an early version of it. And now it's morphed into this epic kind of thing, which has got longer. Charles Reese did a whole edit-y thing at the end of it as well. And when it comes out, when people hear it, it's advanced even more. So that song really evolved over quite a long period of time, but it changed enormously from its original conception into what it actually is now. And it's really fun. And so my original saxophone is on that. It just plays kind of like all the way through it and it's in and out. I always think it's quite an interesting thing that, and it's great that they kept that. Charles and Paul in their production wisdom decided that was going to stay in all the way through. And it was, and it's got that really tentative, dreamy quality to it. Yeah.
Isn't that wonderful though, seeing that evolution of the song of just actually starting out with you, Max and Paul in the studio and then where it builds to what we get now?
Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah. I mean, sometimes I talk about demos, like when you sort of demo a song and Charles Reese goes, there's no such thing as a demo these days because you can do so much digitally with editing capabilities are enormous these days with modern sort of, software, etc. So sometimes with a demo, you get a real magical thing that happens. And then when you try and recreate it, for some reason, you don't find that moment again. So if you do a demo where it's just like purely a creative thing, you can take all those elements and it's almost like restoring them and then producing it. But a song doesn't, like you have a demo and then you use that as reference and you go and re-record something. A lot of stuff that Paul and Charles do together is from the demo. It just is a continuous development of the original idea recorded and then gets embellished. Things get changed in it, but quite often there's the original element there that's inspired the song in the first place, which is always... So
what you're saying is we're in kind of 50 years' time when we get the anniversary box set of 66. There are no demos to put in, right? There's just the songs. Do you know what now? When they reissue Wildwood, you got like the very first version and he'll play so that's not really the process now, is it?
Totally right. I don't think, actually, in 60 with this album in particular, I don't think there's any demos that were, I think everything has come from the original concepts of, I can't think of any. I might be proved wrong, but you're absolutely right, Dan. Yeah. So there aren't going to be those outtakes. Maybe we'll just have to sort of, I don't know.
Polydor are going to be furious. They can't do anything with that back catalog in 50 years' time. Let's talk Sleepy Hollow. This is another absolutely beautiful track. Paul on bass guitar. Did you get to see this in the studio? Did you get to see him doing bass at any point?
Sometimes I didn't get to see him. I don't think I got to see him do that.
I'd love to. I mean, because I can't remember what it was. I was watching, somebody shared a clip with me the other day because it was in, I think it was in the oh no, I tell you what it was. Leah Weller had done a song on YouTube and Paul was playing bass. And I was like, God, it's so cool watching Paul play bass. But it's not very often you get to see Paul do that. And I was like, he looks so cool playing bass.
He loves playing bass. Yeah. He's very happy playing bass. Yeah. He always finds a great part. He really hears that. Yeah.
So on that one, we have you on flute, tenor sax and baritone sax, not all at the same time, obviously, although you probably could. That's good. That's a lovely track. Tell me about your involvement in that.
Yes, I think I recorded that remotely. I actually recorded that from here, from my studio at home. There's a bridge where I play like tenor and baritone. That just came very naturally. That just came out. There's a little flute break in it as well. That was an out-of-body experience where you don't even know what you're doing. And I was just sort of playing along and it suddenly came out. It was like a God-given kind of thing that was just given to me, and that just came out of my flute. And I was like, blimey, that's all right. I sent that bit to Paul and he said, it's absolutely perfect, because we were going to edit the track to make it a bit longer so I could have a longer solo in that particular point, because it was quite a short, so it's sometimes quite hard to get a feeling into a short moment. But this just came out and Paul was like, oh, that's just perfect. And it was like absolutely no sweat whatsoever. It was just amazing to do.
And this from the fella who forced you to play flute in the first place, if I remember rightly from the first time we chatted, right? That wasn't your instrument, was it? But you had to go and get it fixed, didn't you? I remember now.
I had, yeah. Well, I've told that story.
Yeah.
So there you go. I mean, I love playing flute. I think I mentioned in the podcast, I've got a real connection with it. And it's lovely to have that in my sort of group of instruments that I play. And, it's a different form of expression. So I love the what it brings to songs as well, even if it's like a flavour in the background, Yeah,
because we have a bit of that on Jumble Queen as well. And it just sounds lovely. One question about this. So when you're recording remotely there, what's going on? Take me through that. So Paul sent you something, you've got that in cans, but you're recording yourself along with it. Is that your process? Paul's not dialing in, presumably, like VoiceOver Man or whatever it is. Yeah.
I have done live video remote recording with studios around the world where the producer, so like this, so you set up a Zoom chat just like this, and the producer will be watching you play, talking you through stuff. But with Paul, he'll think, oh, maybe Jacko could do a little bit on that. I'll send him so I get a stereo mix of the track and I put it up on Logic in my computer, and then I can play over the top. I can overdub on the top of it. Then I can send just my WAV file back. So it would just have the flute or just the baritone or just the tenor. And then the start time will be the same as the start time of the tune. So Charles will get it back through WeTransfer, and he'll just take the file and slot it into his Pro Tools software, and bing, it all comes up. It's all in sync. Hopefully my dog hasn't been barking all the way through
the magic. Look at this though. Amazing. I guess your preference is to be in the studio with them all doing it live though, right?
Yeah. I mean, generally speaking, I would say, yeah, definitely. You get a real thing. But I do like the solitary kind of moment when you're on your own. You can really focus on, and I can do loads of takes.
Yeah.
I can get it right, I mean, sometimes it happens really naturally and quickly, and other times you have to work it a little bit, and I kind of walk away and have a cup of tea and go, why, and then you sort of have to visualize what it is you're trying to do, and then become more objective about it. And so sometimes when you're on your own in your own studio, you can benefit from the detail and the focus, but you can also suffer from not having anyone to say, that take you did 3 hours ago.
Yeah.
You've been bashing your head against the wall trying to get it right for the last 3 hours. Well, that was actually, I would have said that would be perfect, mate. So,
that was the one. Yeah.
Yeah, that was the one. You could have saved yourselves a lot of grief.
Let's talk Jumble Queen, because this does have Stone Foundation. This has the General Trig on it, as Andy and Dave from Stone Foundation as well. Were you all in the studio on that one? Can you remember?
Yeah, we were all together. Steve Trigg did the arrangement, and we all played together. So we had the backing track. It was pretty much kind of all the way there, that track. And so, yes, the four of us were just doing overdubs on that. Steve Trigg did a great arrangement of it. So we were reading the parts and fixing a couple of things along the way. And I think we did a couple of little double tracking bits on that. But basically, it was just like a 4-part trombone, 2 trumpets, and me on baritone. I played on that. I think we did 3 or 4 tracks that day. So that was a brass day that was down at the barn, and that was great. That was great.
More stuff to come as well from that session, I believe. Not everything made the album. There's other tracks in the bag, which is always the thing with Paul. There's more stuff to come, folks. I want to ask you, before we go, about Abbey Road. Throughout the album, we get some beautiful arrangements, some beautiful orchestration, Hannah Peel and the Britten Symphonia. You were there, Abbey Road. I mean, I don't think you had any roles to play that day, Jacko, but so this was a Jolly Boys outing, right?
Yeah. I took my son Joe to show him.
He went and all brilliant.
Yeah. It was a bit of a family atmosphere, and we were in Studio 2 and we got invited down. It's always great going to Abbey Road, and we were all there in the studio just hanging out, taking photographs at the front. And it's just amazing to hear the classical players with Hannah Peel's arrangements are just glorious. She's an amazing talent. But I was eating tangerines and drinking tea and
you've changed, Jacko. What's happened?
Oh yeah. No, it was the middle of the day,
That wouldn't have stopped you before.
No, it would definitely not. Yeah, eating oranges and drinking tea. Yeah. and then networking in the cafe downstairs with various other bands and people and faces.
Yeah, and that your business card, yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. That was lovely. Yeah, that was lovely.
It does sound wonderful. I mean, I love her stuff generally as a solo artist or composer, but her stuff with Paul has always sounded very special, right from, like you said, Gravity earlier on. You mentioned that True Meanings period, but right through to now, she always adds so much to the albums, I think.
Yeah. I think that's where you met Paul, actually, at the Rotunda Bar at King's Place when we were going to see Hannah Peel.
That's right. Bei Wang. Yeah, this London-based Chinese percussionist lady was just unbelievable.
And the 2 of them did this amazing concert at King's Place, and we all met up. We were just having a drink in the bar before, and then you showed up, and then Paul was there. And
that's right. I'd forgotten. I should have started this conversation with that. I forgot. Thanks to you lot. This is how the final episode happened, wasn't it?
That's it. That's how you got on board with that. So that was good. Yeah. So,
well, I'm glad that you could witness that. It was a very special, very, very special evening.
It was great. Yeah. But Hannah Peel, she's a legend, amazing arranger and musician.
How does it feel to be back on a Paul Weller album then, Jacko? Because I mean, I remember this reconnection between the 2 of you that you talked about when we chatted on the podcast before, and you reaching out because you loved the album on Sunset and the work that was going on
Village,
and stuff.
Especially that track Village. Yeah.
And here we are, now we're like, adding like some big key moments on this LP and the live shows, man. It's mental, isn't it? I'm
proud as punch. I'm just proud to be there. And I just feel totally blessed. So I'm 63 later this year. You know what I mean? It's like I never for one moment thought that I'd be out on the road playing on top albums and stuff. I mean, I've been in and out of the music all my life. And the last 5 years, I've been right back in it. It's just an amazing chain of events that have led to this. I enjoy every single moment, and I'm just so proud to be on this latest 66 album, and it means the world to me. It really is amazing. So
it'll be so good when that physical product's out there. You get your vinyl, and there we are, Jacko Peake, right? That never gets, like, you never take that for granted, do you?
No. And the artwork's great, and Peter Blake, and the whole concept of Paul being 66, and it's an actual original painted on a piece of old board.
I got to hold it the other day.
You did, yes.
Yeah. They got it out for me. It's like,
amazing!
God, wow, what?
Yeah. I'm out of the vault.
Yeah,
keep it for safekeeping because it's
buried in the concrete deep under Black Barn. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah.
This has been so lovely catching up with you. It's been lovely to see this journey, and like I said, my discovery of Paul was it was you in the band. So to see you back in the band, and you've seen me front row of these gigs in recent years as well. It's wicked, man. It just adds so much, man. So thank you from me as well, right?
No problem, Dan. It's a pleasure to talk to you again, man. And I'll see you down See you down the front row.
I get more out of breath these days from pogoing, you'd have noticed.
Steady on. Lower tunes this time then for you.
Yeah. Those numbers. I need that acoustic set back in the middle.
Yeah, maybe you do. Yeah.
Nice to see you, man. Thanks a lot.
Cheers, Dan.
A reminder, if you've enjoyed this episode of the Paul Weller Fan Podcast, you can find a whole box set packed full of brand new episodes. The Story of 66, available now wherever you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, YouTube, and more, or at paulwellerfanpodcast.com. Whilst you're on my website, why not head into our store, grab yourself a virtual coffee. It's always nice to get a little thanks for this free content. Much appreciated. All available online, paulwellerfanpodcast.com. And here's the big ask. Please do spread the word on social media. So many amazing people giving their time for free to chat to me on these episodes of the podcast. So I'd love it if you could spread the word. Facebook, Instagram, and X. Tell everybody about the Story of 66, this celebration of the brand new album from Paul Weller. Thanks for listening. I'll see you next time.